My toxic manager made my life hell for 2 years, so I recorded everything and sent it to corporate the day before her promotion. Veronica started as our department supervisor when I was 26, fresh out of my marketing coordinator role and eager to prove myself in the corporate world. She seemed professional during the first week. Tailored suits, firm handshakes, talks about elevating our team's performance. She had an MBA from Northwestern, 10 years of experience, and spoke confidently about streamlining processes and maximizing efficiency. I actually felt lucky to work under someone so polished and accomplished. Our previous supervisor had been friendly but disorganized, letting deadlines slip and rarely providing clear direction. Veronica seemed like exactly what our department needed. The mask slipped fast. By week 3, she was scheduling mandatory 7 a.m. meetings every Tuesday and Thursday, then showing up at 7:30 with Starbucks, explaining she'd been networking with leadership and couldn't break away from strategic discussions. The rest of us would sit there, bleary-eyed and caffeinated, waiting for her grand entrance while she made small talk about traffic and weather. When I mentioned the early start time was difficult with my train schedule, I lived 40 minutes away and the 6:10 a.m. train was the only one that got me there on time. She smiled coldly. Commitment isn't convenient, she said, stirring her venti caramel macchiato with deliberate slowness. Maybe this role isn't the right fit for your lifestyle preferences. The psychological warfare escalated quickly. She'd assign urgent projects at 5:50 p.m. on Fridays, demanding them completed first thing Monday morning, not Tuesday, not when you get a chance. Monday at 8 a.m. sharp with full analysis and recommendations. She'd approve my vacation requests for scheduling, then forget to process them in the system until I'd already lost the hotel deposits and flight cancellation fees had kicked in. During team meetings, she'd ask my opinion on campaigns or strategies, wait for me to start speaking with genuine interest, then interrupt me mid-sentence to say, "Actually, let's hear from someone with more experience in this particular area." The micromanagement was suffocating. She required detailed daily reports of how I spent each hour, questioned every client interaction, and demanded to approve even routine email responses before I could send them. She'd schedule check-ins that lasted 2 hours, during which she'd nitpick every aspect of my work while simultaneously complaining that I wasn't being productive enough. My coworker David watched this happening and pulled me aside after one particularly brutal meeting where she'd made me present my entire quarterly project proposal, then systematically torn it apart in front of the entire team for lacking strategic vision, missing key demographic insights, and failing to consider market positioning implications. "She's targeting you," he whispered as we walked to the break room, glancing around to make sure no one could overhear. "I've been here 3 years and I've never seen her treat anyone else like this. It's like she's got a personal vendetta or something." He was absolutely right. Veronica was charming with senior management, always volunteering for high-visibility projects, staying late to help with executive presentations, and name-dropping her weekend golf games with the VP of sales and her book club meetings with the chief marketing officer's wife. She was supportive with my teammates, offering flexible schedules when they had family emergencies, praising their work publicly in team meetings, and advocating for their salary increases during budget planning sessions. But with me, she was absolutely vicious, finding fault in everything from my email formatting to the way I organized my desk drawers to the tone of voice I used during client calls. I couldn't figure out why until I overheard her talking to Rebecca, another department supervisor, by the copy machine one afternoon. I was in the supply closet grabbing printer paper and organizing our dwindling stock of office supplies when their conversation drifted through the thin walls that separated the storage area from the main office space. "She reminds me of myself at that age," Veronica said, and I could hear the genuine disgust in her voice. "Ambitious, confident, always speaking up in meetings like she has something valuable to contribute. It's disgusting how entitled these young women are now. They think they deserve respect just for showing up." "She seems hardworking," Rebecca replied diplomatically, and I could hear her shuffling papers. "They all seem hardworking until they start demanding promotions they haven't earned and questioning decisions made by people with actual experience. Mark my words, she'll be gunning for my job within 2 years. I can see it in her eyes." My stomach dropped like an elevator with severed cables. This wasn't about my performance or attitude. This was about her insecurity and her perception that I was a threat to her position. The breaking point came during my annual performance review, conducted in the sterile conference room that always smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. She'd been building a case against me for months, documenting every bathroom break that lasted longer than 5 minutes, every minute I arrived after 8:59 a.m., every project that was 99% perfect instead of absolutely flawless. She had a manila folder 2 inches thick with printed emails, time-stamped notes, highlighted performance metrics, and detailed observations about my concerning behavioral patterns. "Your attitude has become concerning over the past several months," she said, sliding a formal written warning across the polished conference room table. "Multiple colleagues have complained about your negativity, unprofessional behavior, and resistance to constructive feedback." I knew this was a complete lie. My teammates regularly thanked me for covering their mistakes when Veronica threw them under the bus. David had told me just last week that I was the most reliable person on the team and the only one who actually helped train new employees properly. Our intern Whitney had confided that I was the only person who took time to explain processes instead of just dumping tasks on her desk with minimal instructions. "Who complained?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady and professional. "That's confidential information that I cannot share," she replied with fake sympathy. "But the pattern is clear and well documented. You're not meeting our cultural standards for collaborative teamwork and positive attitude maintenance." She slid a second document across the table, a performance improvement plan that would put me on probation for 6 months. Any additional incidents of poor attitude, missed deadlines, or unprofessional behavior would result in immediate termination. The plan required weekly one-on-one meetings with her, daily productivity reports, and mandatory attendance at professional development workshops on topics like accepting feedback gracefully, and team collaboration in corporate environments. I signed the documents because I desperately needed the job. Student loans don't pay themselves, and I just signed a lease on a one-bedroom apartment after finally moving out of my parents' house. But that night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling until 3 a.m., replaying every humiliating interaction and questioning every decision I'd made, I made a decision that would change everything. That's when I started recording everything. I researched recording laws in our state extensively, reading legal blogs and consulting with a lawyer friend from college. We were in a one-party consent state, meaning I could legally record conversations as long as I was present and participating. I bought a small recording device that looks like a regular ballpoint pen from Amazon for $89, along with a backup device that resembled a USB drive. I began documenting every interaction with Veronica, no matter how brief or seemingly insignificant. I saved every email to a personal cloud account, including her replies, forwards, and the metadata showing when messages were sent and received. I screenshotted every unreasonable request before completing it, timestamped and saved to an encrypted folder with detailed notes about context and circumstances. I kept a detailed log in a password-protected document with exact timestamps, direct quotes, witness names, and my emotional state during each incident. For 8 months, I gathered evidence while she made my life increasingly miserable in ways both subtle and overt. She'd forget to invite me to crucial department meetings, then write me up for being uninformed about important decisions made in my absence. She'd change project requirements after I'd completed work according to her original specifications, then document my inability to follow directions and resistance to constructive feedback. She'd assign me to clients she knew were difficult and demanding, then blame me when they complained about our service levels or missed their unrealistic expectations. The passive-aggressive behavior was constant and exhausting. She'd schedule important client calls during my designated lunch break, then act surprised and disappointed when I mentioned I had other plans or needed to eat. She'd reassign my projects to other team members without explanation or advance notice, then question why my workload seemed lighter than everyone else's during team meetings. She'd ask me to stay late for urgent revisions that turned out to be minor formatting changes she could have handled herself in 5 minutes. She began requiring me to CC her on every single email I sent, even routine correspondence with colleagues I'd been working with for years. She'd respond to these emails with suggestions that were actually commands, rewriting my professional communications to sound more collaborative and team-oriented. She questioned my lunch plans, my bathroom breaks, my phone calls, and even my choice of clothing on casual Fridays. My mental health started deteriorating rapidly. I was having anxiety attacks in bathroom stalls, hyperventilating before team meetings, and checking my email obsessively at all hours. I couldn't sleep without replaying our conversations and wondering what I'd done wrong or how I could have handled situations differently. I started seeing a therapist who helped me realize this wasn't normal workplace stress. This was systematic harassment designed to break down my confidence and self-worth. Document everything, my therapist advised during our 3rd session. People like this rely on gaslighting and making you question your own perception. The more evidence you have, the more you'll trust your own reality. So I did. I documented her telling me my presentation was impressive work that really showed your potential in front of the client, then emailing me privately 20 minutes later that it was barely acceptable and showed poor preparation that reflected badly on our entire team. I recorded her praising my campaign ideas enthusiastically in team meetings, then later claiming I'd stolen them from other team members or found them on competitor websites. I screenshotted her approving my project timeline with her digital signature, then criticizing me for falling behind when she'd secretly moved up the deadline by 2 weeks without telling me. The documentation revealed patterns I hadn't noticed before. She was systematically isolating me from colleagues by spreading rumors about my attitude problems and difficulty accepting feedback. She was creating impossible standards that she applied only to me, while giving other team members flexibility and support. She was building a narrative of incompetence and insubordination that would justify whatever action she wanted to take. The worst incident came when she tried to sabotage my promotion opportunity. I'd applied for a senior marketing strategist role in another department, a position that would get me away from her toxic influence and advance my career significantly. The role was perfect for my experience level and would have meant a 25% salary increase plus better benefits. During my interview with Tom Harrison, the hiring manager, he seemed confused about my qualifications and work history. Veronica mentioned you've had some performance issues over the past year, he said carefully, consulting his notes. Something about missed deadlines, attitude problems with clients, and resistance to management feedback? I explained that I'd never missed a deadline in my entire career and had received positive feedback from every client I'd worked with. I offered to provide references and examples of my work, but I could see in his eyes that he'd already made his decision based on Veronica's character assassination. Her recommendation carried significant weight in the company, and her lies had poisoned the well before I'd even had a chance to interview. I didn't get the job, despite being the most qualified candidate and having excellent interview performance. That night, I was working late on a campaign proposal that was due the next morning when I discovered something that would become the smoking gun in my case. Veronica had left her computer unlocked when she went to a dinner meeting with potential clients, and I needed to access a shared file for my project that was stored on her desktop. While navigating to the shared drive, I noticed she had a folder with my name on it. I wasn't planning to snoop, but curiosity and a growing sense of unease got the better of me. What I found made my blood run cold and my hands shake. She'd been forwarding my personal emails to herself, emails I'd sent from my work computer during lunch breaks to friends and family about medical appointments, family problems, relationship issues, and personal struggles. She'd been building a comprehensive psychological profile, looking for weaknesses she could exploit and personal information she could use against me. She had screenshots of my social media posts, notes about my personal relationships and family dynamics, detailed observations about my behavior and appearance, and even information about my financial situation that she'd gleaned from overheard phone conversations. But the most damning evidence was a document titled Termination Strategy Confidential. In her own words, she'd written, building comprehensive case for termination over 6 to 8 month timeline. Goal, promotion to director, requires demonstrating ability to manage difficult employees and make hard personnel decisions. Current documentation strategy showing excellent progress. Performance improvement plan will provide final justification for removal. Timeline should coincide with Q3 performance reviews for maximum impact. Alternative strategy, create hostile enough environment that subject quits voluntarily, avoiding potential unemployment claims. She'd planned this entire campaign from the beginning. My performance issues weren't real. They were manufactured to justify firing me and boost her promotion chances. She'd systematically created a hostile work environment designed to either break me down completely or force me to quit. I photographed everything with my phone, my hands shaking as I captured each damning page. This wasn't just workplace harassment. This was calculated career sabotage with documented premeditation. The next morning, I received an email from Janet in HR that made my stomach drop like a stone. Please join us for a meeting at 2 p.m. today to discuss your employment status. Please bring your badge, laptop, and any company property you may have. This was it. After 2 years of psychological torture and systematic harassment, she was finally going to fire me. But I had other plans that she couldn't have anticipated. I spent my lunch break sitting in my car in the parking garage, organizing 8 months of meticulously gathered evidence into a comprehensive file that would have made a prosecutor proud. I created a detailed timeline showing how her behavior escalated immediately after she learned about my promotion applications. I included audio recordings of her contradicting herself within the same conversations, screenshots of her changing project requirements after work was completed according to her original specifications, and copies of emails showing her falsifying performance issues and creating fictional client complaints. The crown jewel was her termination strategy document, which proved premeditation and malicious intent beyond any reasonable doubt. At 1:55 p.m., exactly 5 minutes before my scheduled termination meeting, I sent everything to corporate headquarters via encrypted email. Not just to our local HR representative, I sent the complete file to Patricia Webb, the VP of Human Resources, David Chen, the General Counsel, Dr. Amanda Foster, the Chief Ethics Officer, and Robert Martinez, the CEO himself. I included a detailed cover letter explaining how Veronica had created a systematically hostile work environment, violated multiple company privacy policies, engaged in discriminatory behavior based on age and gender, and documented her own illegal activity in writing. I attached 47 separate pieces of evidence, organized chronologically with detailed explanations and legal analysis. The file was professional, comprehensive, and devastating. Then I walked into what was supposed to be my termination meeting. The small conference room felt like an execution chamber, with its beige walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and the smell of stale coffee that never quite went away. Veronica sat beside Janet, our local HR representative, looking perfectly composed in her navy blazer and pearl earrings. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon, her makeup was flawless, and she had the confident air of someone who believed she held all the cards. A thick manila folder with my performance issues sat in front of her like a weapon she was eager to use. She looked smug, confident, like a cat who'd finally cornered a particularly troublesome mouse after a long hunt. "Thank you for coming," Janet began, consulting her prepared notes and avoiding eye contact. "We've called this meeting to discuss some ongoing concerns about your performance and cultural fit within our organization. After extensive documentation and careful consideration, we've made the difficult decision that your employment with this company isn't working out." Veronica nodded solemnly, playing the role of the disappointed but professional manager who had tried everything possible to help a struggling employee. "This wasn't an easy decision," she added with fake sympathy. "We've tried to work with you, provided additional training and feedback, but the pattern of concerning behavior has become untenable for our team dynamic." "That's interesting timing," I said calmly, pulling out my phone with steady hands. "Especially since I just sent 2 years of comprehensive evidence to corporate headquarters showing how my supervisor has been systematically harassing me in direct violation of multiple company policies." The color drained from Veronica's face like someone had pulled a plug at the bottom of a bathtub. Her mouth opened slightly but no sound came out. Her carefully composed expression cracked, revealing the panic underneath. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally stammered, but her voice cracked on the last word and her hands began to tremble visibly. I scrolled through my phone with deliberate slowness and played a crystal clear recording of her discussing her documentation strategy and timeline for my removal. Her own voice filled the small conference room, discussing how my termination would help her promotion chances and how she was building a case based on manufactured performance issues. Janet's eyes widened as she listened, her professional composure slipping. "Turn that off immediately," she said quickly, fear creeping into her voice. "We need to postpone this meeting right now." "There's more," I continued calmly, playing a second recording where Veronica admitted to accessing my personal emails and building a psychological profile to find ways to provoke me into reactions she could document as unprofessional behavior. Veronica lunged across the table, trying to grab my phone. "This is a legal recording. You can't use this against me. I'll sue you for invasion of privacy." "Actually, I can use all of this," I replied calmly, moving my phone out of her reach. "This is a one-party consent state, which means every recording was completely legal as long as I was present, and corporate headquarters now has copies of everything, including your termination strategy document and detailed evidence of the personal emails you stole from my computer." Janet was frantically taking notes, her hands shaking as she wrote, "We need to contact our legal department immediately. This meeting is terminated." As we all stood to leave, Veronica grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. "You have no idea what you've just done," she hissed, her professional mask completely gone. "I'll destroy you for this. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." I smiled and gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. "Actually, I think you already tried that approach. How did it work out for you?" Her face turned red with rage, and for a moment I thought she might actually try to hit me. Instead, she stormed out of the conference room, leaving her carefully prepared termination folder scattered on the table. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Patricia Webb, the VP of Human Resources at corporate headquarters, was on the line. "We've reviewed your materials," she said, her voice serious but professional. "This is exactly the kind of behavior we're working to eliminate from our company culture. The evidence you've provided is extremely concerning and potentially criminal. Can you come in tomorrow morning to discuss this matter in detail?" I met with corporate the next day in a gleaming conference room on the 28th floor of their downtown headquarters, with panoramic views of the city that made our local office look like a supply closet. Patricia Webb was there, along with David Chen from legal, Dr. Amanda Foster from ethics, and 2 other executives I didn't recognize. The atmosphere was serious but respectful, a stark contrast to the hostile environment I'd endured for 2 years. They'd already begun their investigation. Computer forensics had pulled Veronica's access logs, confirming she'd accessed my personal emails over 40 times and had been downloading my private communications to her personal files. They'd conducted private interviews with my teammates, who finally felt safe enough to admit they'd witnessed her harassment, but had been afraid to speak up because of her connections to senior management. "David told us she threatened his job when he tried to defend you during a team meeting," Patricia said, reviewing her notes. "Whitney provided a detailed statement about how Veronica instructed her to spy on your activities and report back about your personal phone calls. They'd reviewed security footage showing her going through my desk drawers when I was away, reading personal papers and documents that had nothing to do with work. They'd found evidence that she'd been bad-mouthing me to other departments, spreading rumors designed to damage my professional reputation throughout the company. We had absolutely no idea this level of systematic harassment was occurring," Patricia said, reviewing my meticulously organized documentation. "Your evidence is incredibly thorough and professionally presented. This behavior is completely unacceptable and potentially constitutes criminal harassment and privacy violations." David Chen leaned forward, his expression grave. "The privacy violations alone could result in serious legal consequences for the company if you decided to pursue external legal action. The fact that she documented her own premeditated harassment campaign shows a level of malicious intent and psychological instability that we rarely encounter." Dr. Foster shook her head as she read through Veronica's psychological profile of me. "This crosses every ethical boundary we have in place. The personal nature of this harassment, the systematic approach, the documented premeditation, it's sociopathic behavior that has no place in any workplace." They asked detailed questions about each incident, had me walk through the timeline chronologically, and requested additional context for several recordings. The meeting lasted 6 hours, with breaks for lunch and legal consultations. By the end, they'd built an airtight case that would protect the company from liability, while ensuring Veronica faced serious consequences for her actions. 2 days later, Veronica was fired for cause with immediate effect. Her promotion to director was rescinded immediately and permanently. Her severance package was revoked entirely due to documented policy violations and potential criminal activity. Security escorted her from the building while she ranted about lawsuits, unfair treatment, and how I had ruined her life with lies. I watched from my desk as she was walked out, clutching a small cardboard box containing her personal items, her professional facade finally cracked beyond any possibility of repair. The company offered me the director position she'd been set to receive, along with a 40% salary increase, full benefits package, a corner office, and 3 weeks of additional vacation time. More importantly, they implemented comprehensive new policies for documenting harassment, created an anonymous reporting system to prevent similar situations, and mandated quarterly ethics training for all management personnel. But the best part came a week later, when the full scope of Veronica's behavior became clear. David knocked on my new office door. Yes, I'd taken Veronica's old corner office, complete with a window view she'd always bragged about, and the mahogany desk she'd claimed was a symbol of her success. "You need to see this," he said, handing me his phone with barely contained laughter. It was a LinkedIn post from Veronica, posted just hours after her termination. "Sometimes setbacks are setups for comebacks. When one door closes, another opens to even better opportunities. Excited to explore new challenges in management and bring my innovative leadership skills to an organization that truly values creative problem-solving and results-driven approaches. Resilient leadership, sharp new beginnings, management excellence. Next chapter." The comment section was even more entertaining. Several former colleagues had shared the post with laughing emojis and sarcastic responses. Someone had replied, "Innovative leadership like reading employees' personal emails and creating fake performance issues." Another comment read, "I heard you got fired for harassment. Is that part of the creative problem-solving you're talking about?" A third person had posted, "Maybe your next employer should ask for references from the people who actually worked under you instead of just your golf buddies." I laughed until I had tears streaming down my face. 6 months later, I was grabbing my usual Friday evening coffee at the cafe near my apartment when I spotted a familiar figure hunched over a laptop in the corner booth. Veronica looked dramatically different from the polished professional I remembered. Her usually perfect blonde hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing a faded sweater instead of her signature tailored blazers, and the dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't been sleeping well for quite some time. When she saw me approach the counter, she closed her laptop abruptly and approached my table with the kind of determined stride I remembered from our worst confrontations. "Some things never change. I hope you're happy," she said, her voice dripping with bitterness and barely controlled rage. "You completely ruined my career and destroyed my reputation over a simple personality conflict." I looked at her calmly, noting how different she seemed without the corporate armor. manufactured confidence and institutional power that had once made her so intimidating. No, I documented criminal behavior and systematic policy violations with comprehensive evidence, I replied evenly. There's a significant difference between personality conflicts and premeditated harassment campaigns. I was just trying to do my job and maintain professional standards, she insisted, her voice rising slightly and drawing stares from other customers. You were always difficult to work with, always challenging my authority. I was trying to help you improve and become a better team player. Your job description didn't include reading my personal emails, building unauthorized psychological profiles, or creating fake performance issues, I replied calmly. That was systematic harassment with documented premeditation, not professional development. Her face reddened with anger and embarrassment. You recorded me without permission. You violated my privacy and trust. Actually, I recorded conversations I was legally permitted to record in a one-party consent state, I corrected. You violated my privacy by accessing personal communications and creating unauthorized files about my private life. The law is very clear about which of us acted illegally. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her struggling between explosive rage and the dawning realization that she had no moral high ground to stand on. Her breathing was shallow and quick, her hands clenched into fists. I lost everything because of you, she said finally, her voice cracking slightly. My promotion, my reputation, my professional references. No reputable company will hire me now. I've had to take contract work just to pay my bills. I stood up and gathered my things, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and genuine pity. You lost everything because of your own documented actions and choices. I simply provided evidence of what you chose to do to another human being. You were always self-righteous, she spat, her professional vocabulary finally failing her. Always acting like you were better than everyone else, like you deserved special treatment. I smiled sadly, remembering how intimidated I used to be by her anger and accusations. Actually, you taught me something valuable during those 2 years of psychological torture. You showed me exactly the kind of manager and human being I never want to become. As I walked toward the door, she called after me with a desperation that was almost pathetic. This isn't over. I'll find a way to get back at you for this. I have connections in this industry. I turned back one final time, looking at this woman who had once controlled my daily happiness and professional future. Veronica, I'm not recording this conversation, but I'd be extremely careful about making public threats in crowded places. Some lessons apparently need to be learned more than once. I left her standing there, clutching her laptop bag like a life preserver, looking more defeated and powerless than I'd ever seen her. The woman who had once seemed so formidable now looked small, bitter, and utterly alone. Last month, David reached out with an update that made my entire week. Apparently, Veronica had found a new job at a smaller marketing firm across town after months of unemployment and increasingly desperate job searches. Within 3 months of her hire, 2 employees had quit unexpectedly, specifically citing her management style and hostile behavior in their detailed exit interviews. A third employee had filed a formal complaint with HR about workplace harassment and hostile work environment. The company's Glassdoor rating had dropped significantly, with multiple reviews mentioning toxic management and unprofessional behavior from supervisors. She was currently on a 90-day performance improvement plan, the same kind of probationary period she tried to use against me. The irony was so perfect it felt like cosmic justice. Karma's funny like that, David texted, along with a screenshot of her new company's Glassdoor reviews. Someone had written, management lacks basic emotional intelligence and professionalism, felt constantly undermined and documented for minor issues while watching supervisor engage in inappropriate and unprofessional behavior. Would not recommend working here unless you enjoy toxic workplace dynamics. Another review read, supervisor creates hostile environment through micromanagement, false accusations, and invasion of privacy. HR does nothing to address concerns. Looking for new opportunities. I shared the message with my own team during our weekly check-in meeting. This is why we focus on honest feedback, professional development, and mutual respect instead of gotcha management and power games, I told them. These days, I manage a team of 12 marketing professionals, ranging from recent college graduates to seasoned veterans with decades of experience. I make sure they feel heard, supported, and valued as both professionals and human beings. When they make mistakes, and everyone does, we discuss improvement strategies, provide additional training if needed, and focus on preventing similar issues in the future. When they succeed, I celebrate their achievements publicly, make sure senior management knows about their contributions, and advocate for their promotions and salary increases during budget meetings. I keep a genuine open door policy, literally. My office door stays open unless I'm in a confidential meeting or handling sensitive personnel matters. I respond to emails promptly with clear context and expectations. I never change project requirements without detailed explanation and appropriate timeline adjustments. I shield my team from unreasonable corporate demands whenever possible and take full responsibility when things go wrong, even if the mistakes weren't directly my fault. When team members need time off for personal reasons, family emergencies, medical appointments, or mental health days, I approve it immediately without guilt trips, passive-aggressive comments, or demands for excessive documentation. I trust them to manage their responsibilities and communicate openly when they need support. I never want anyone to feel the way Veronica made me feel during those 2 years of psychological torture, but I kept all my documentation equipment and recording devices carefully stored in my desk drawer just in case, because I learned something crucial during those 2 years of hell. Workplace bullies rely on victims staying silent, isolated, and afraid to speak up. They count on people not knowing their legal rights, not documenting incidents properly, and not believing anyone will take their side against someone in a position of authority. The moment you start keeping detailed records, building comprehensive cases, and demanding accountability from higher authorities, their power evaporates like morning fog in sunlight. Veronica thought she was teaching me a lesson about hierarchy, respect, and knowing my place in the corporate food chain, she believed she could break down my confidence, destroy my career prospects, and force me out of the company through systematic psychological harassment. Instead, she taught me that the best revenge isn't just living well, it's having really excellent evidence, understanding your legal rights, and having the courage to use both when the time is right. My team members often ask me for career advice, especially the younger employees who are still learning to navigate corporate politics and workplace dynamics. I always tell them the same thing. Document everything that makes you uncomfortable. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, and remember that toxic behavior says much more about the person exhibiting it than it does about you. But also remember that sometimes good people need to take a stand to protect others who might not be able to protect themselves. Last week, one of my junior employees, Jessica, came to me with concerns about a client who was making inappropriate comments about her appearance and demanding unreasonable turnarounds that would require her to work weekends without compensation. Instead of telling her to deal with it, toughen up, or that difficult clients were just part of the business, I immediately escalated the issue to our account management team and made sure the client understood our professional boundaries and company policies. "Thank you for taking this seriously," Jessica said afterward, looking relieved and grateful. My manager at my last job told me that dealing with inappropriate behavior from male clients was just part of being a woman in marketing, and I should consider it a compliment. I smiled and opened my desk drawer, pulling out a small recording device that looked like an ordinary pen. "Let's make sure that kind of situation never happens again, and that you have evidence if anyone tries to dismiss your concerns." Her eyes widened with understanding and gratitude. The cycle of protection continues, and toxic managers like Veronica lose a little more power every time someone refuses to suffer in silence.